What's up, Pirates? Wraith here, and today we're going to be going over the bans that just happened yesterday. And it's crazy because we've been waiting a long time. We knew these bans were coming, and they're finally here, so we can go ahead and talk about them. So I apologize if my voice is a little wonky. I'm a little sick. Anyways, let's go ahead and get into the first card that was banned. It was Jinbe, which was targeted at the Doflamingo leader. And because of this card here, 90% of a Doflamingo deck was 4 cost 7 warlords. And so that means this card here could play an infinite amount of options in order to, just overwhelm your opponent. And obviously you have, different choices on what to play out of this. This is just an extra body, it would cheat out a second body, but that second body would like recur resources. It would set up your top 3 and give you a Dawn, it would draw you a card, right? So this card here just had way too much early game potential into this deck. And, being able to swarm the board on your 3 Dawn, your second turn on 3 Dawn, like just, being able to go Jinbe into another body is just so overwhelming. And then even on your 5 Dawn, you could, double body, triple body potentially if you high rolled. It's just like it was too overwhelming for like most of the decks to even handle. And so targeting this ban here means the deck is much slower early on. And while it can still do a lot of its crazy stuff, it's like now it's a little more tame because you can't just high roll in Jinbe and, oh, I saw 2 early game Jinbeis, I just win the game, because you can't keep up. So I definitely think this is going to be a very, very good ban moving forward. While I think Doflamingo is still going to be a very strong deck, very strong leader, I do think the gameplay on how exactly, a list is going to come about and like the type of style you want to play the deck is not going to be, so rush and so aggro as it was before, swinging so many 7s. It's probably going to take more of a mid-range approach, more control on the board. And we're going to see from here on out if people do continue to even want to test this deck and make it work. So I like this ban 100%. They should have banned the Jinbe. I agree with this here. Moving forward, we're going to see how it pans out. But we can go ahead and talk about the next card here. We have Gecko Moria, ACOS Gecko Moria. We've been having campaigns to get this card banned for so long, and we finally got it. I believe banning this card was the right decision. Obviously, we have to put into context when it comes to the designers of these cards is like, okay, when a card like this exists, you can play up to a 4 cost and a 2 cost, right? But there's dual color leaders. So there's a black and blue, there's a black and yellow, right? So there's infinite amount of variations of these dual color leaders where this Moria card can play any 4 cost, any 2 cost from trash. What that means is moving forward, ever since this card was played, the designers have to watch exactly what they print. Any new cards that are coming out that are able to be played from this Gecko Moria have to be watched, not to be overtuned, because in the case that where they make a 4 cost, for example, overtuned and it's too broken, pair that with a card like Gecko Moria, now you just have an insane amount of value where Gecko Moria already can produce those results, right? It would be too overwhelming. And I feel like banning this card right now is probably for the best, just so, moving on in the future, there's nothing that can be boxed in, right? So like if they want to make it like a very strong 4 cost card, they can go ahead and do this now without having to worry about, hey, would it be bad if, this super strong card we just made can be played off Gecko Moria, another, over and over. So it's like getting this out of the way is very good. I think this card is obnoxious and definitely was probably the strongest card in the game in terms of value. And so I definitely agree with this ban here. I also do believe they chose the right moment. I think if they did it too early on, the metas would have been just too crazy. They've been pretty structured and pretty good so far. I think the only one I personally didn't enjoy was like OP08 and 8.5, which was like kind of the same as OP07. It kind of just took that trend with BY Lucci being very, very prevalent. But for the most part, I think this is good. For the overall health of the game, I 100% agree with this ban here. I do think it's definitely warranted, and it was very good on them for this ban. All right, so the third card we have is going to be Ice Age. Ice Age is one of those cards where it's like a sneaky, hard-hitting card, It's one of those cards that's very, very underrated. Not in the sense that people don't think it's super strong. I think it was just kind of like undervalued in terms of like how much value you actually get from this card. I do think that Ice Age was giving way too much opportunity for decks that really rely on KO as kind of their specialty, like Lucci, for example, Smoker, Gecko Moria. So like these black decks where their whole basis on their decks is to KO stuff, and board clear. This 1 cost card that not only kills a 3 cost on trigger, but reducers for 5 cost. Now imagine you pair something like this with Gecko Moria, right? These two right here together are so relentless because you would be able to clear any 2 units on a board. If you have 2 of these Ice Age reductions or Ice Age and Tempest, you'd be able to clear full boards while you establish 3 brand new bodies that can swing. Your opponents honestly would not have a way back if they could not, just Moria KO their board back, right? So it was always a Moria war. A lot of the times the games came down to who has more Morias, right? I especially in OP08 back then, I think, the top decks were all running Moria, and it's like, okay, how many Morias did I get? How many Morias did you get, right? And this card here is just too broken. I think like the biggest issue is like it's 1 Dawn to -5 cost, but then if you pair it with like just a simple Brook, right, which is a 3 cost, -1 KO is 0, you're KOing a 5 cost body. Or if you pair it with like a simple Lucci, a Lucci kills a 2 cost and a 1. So if you do this -5 and pair that with a 2 cost, and let's say you're on the Lucci leader as well, that's an extra -1. So you're already killing an 8 cost body with this 1 Dawn by just raw playing a Lucci, right? Obviously that's not the combos and that's not how you actually go about things, but I'm just giving an example. Like this 5 also gets added to the 2 of the original KO power or KO cost of like a Lucci 4 cost, right? So this card here is just like, it was just way too good. It was just way too good, giving way too much value to the KO deck archetype. And so I believe this ban is also good. So far they went 3 for 3, but now let's go ahead and talk about the last card. I do believe this last card here was definitely a little bit random for me. Not sure how much I like this moving forward. We'll reevaluate and see how good the bans are actually, especially this card here. I think this one didn't need to be banned. I think this was very random. I did hear, as such, like, if, we're banning these 3 here, right, Anel might just, start running rampant, especially banning some of its hardest matchups. Like the black decks where they kind of just destroy Anel or, win that matchup, as people say. Anel would be too strong. Blackbeard is its worst matchup, and if Blackbeard is still one of the best decks, Anel really needs this. If Anel doesn't have this, it's just going to lose even harder to its bad matchup, right, in Blackbeard. And if it's the top contender where, it's only Blackbeards in the top meta, like how Dofi was just recently, then Anel is really just going to get cooked without this card. And so I definitely do think this was a little bit random. I definitely would have suggested them hit a different card, and they had plenty of options, but they decided to go with Kingdom Come, right? And so we have or Raigo. But yeah, I mean, this is our 4th ban. The only one I don't necessarily agree with. And then we can also talk a little bit about Blackbeard, right? So in OP10, it was Dofi, it was Blackbeard, and so we had this back and forth, which one's the best deck, but those 2 were in a tier of their own, right? But now with Dofi taking a step back and not having the opportunity to double play bodies early on with Jinbe, as the teach, you can actually save some turns, not having to leader effect, which is like super beneficial. Now your opponent, has to be a little bit slower. You can save some cards on the back end as Blackbeard not having to leader effect as early, on top of having Kuzan, on top of having Liberation. So the matchup definitely gets a lot easier. And so with that being said, I feel like Blackbeard is gonna have a worse time in this meta than if Dofi was at full strength in OP10. We're gonna have a lot of decks come back that Dofi kind of just gatekept, right? A lot of the rush decks you just wouldn't play because Dofi was just a faster, better deck, right? Zoro, Belobetti, just all these rush decks, and you would have these rush decks going up against the Dofi where the Dofi just double plays Jinbe back to back, and now it has 5 bodies. You're barely at 3. You're a 4 life leader, or whatever the case may be, and it just kills you way faster and gets so much more value, and it can send things back to your hand. And there was no reason to play any other rush deck other than Dofi because it was the best rush deck. It's just the best deck in general. And so now I feel like we're gonna have more Zoros in play. That 3 cost chopper that summons another animal is going to be pretty rampant. I think Zoo Shanks is going to be a thing. Zoo Zoro. I feel like these fast paced decks are going to come back. And I'm going to be honest, all of them kind of just like they all have a good time into Blackbeard. I feel like Blackbeard struggles against these faster paced decks, especially when they can summon so many bodies. I have to find the right pieces. And obviously Liberation does help, but I'm not sure how well I'm going to be able to keep up. Or how any Blackbeard will be able to keep up. And so if the meta gets a bit faster, we're definitely gonna have to wait and see how Teach handles that and how I can, or how we as a community, the people on Teach can build a deck list that's gonna, you know, try to aim for that. But the meta could be slower. I could be wrong. This is my opinion. But yeah, I just wanted to talk about these 4 cards here in the ban list, which is super exciting. We finally get a brand new meta. We finally get an Awaken TCG video. And so, yeah, I mean, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I'm a little sick. My voice is a little rough, so I hope you guys don't mind too much. But I appreciate you guys watching. Make sure to like this video, comment down below, hit the subscribe button, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Peace.